Good morning, church. My name is Scott Beard. I'm the lead pastor here at First United Methodist Church in Kirksville. And it's a glorious fall morning here in Kirksville. I pray that it is wherever you are, if you're here in town or somewhere else around the country. I pray that you're having a glorious day and that your day is getting a good start, one that you're happy about. We are in the middle of a worship series here at church on stewardship. And when we say the word stewardship, most people say, oh, they just want money. That's what this is all about. And that's the idea of stewarding our entire lives is really what this is about. And this idea of stewarding the things that we have, the gifts that God has given us, and the abilities we have, and the time we have, and the rest we have. This week we're actually talking a lot about stewarding our rest, because God was very intent about us taking regular rest, time to rest, not just so we could do more, but because that's one of the ways we connect with God and with one another, is through our opportunities to take time to rest. And I got to thinking about this topic, and one of the scriptures that came to mind is Ecclesiastes 3, that comes from this book in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. We call it the book of Ecclesiastes in the Christian world, but in the Hebrew world they call it Kohelet, because Kohelet is a Hebrew word for teacher. And the Ecclesiastes is a book of what's considered wisdom literature. And we give credit to Solomon, or King Solomon, for writing this book called Ecclesiastes. It's probably written by a variety of people over a long period of time. It's a collection of wisdom statements, and mostly in a poetic form. It's a very popular and often quoted book. So I wanted to read a little bit of this Ecclesiastes 3, starting with verse 1. This is an older translation, because I think it's the one that we probably know the best, the King James Version. It says, "To everything there's a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." And I think that this helps, at least it helps me, I don't know what it does for you, but it helps me kind of put time in perspective. Because oftentimes I said, I wish I only had a few more hours today. If I could stretch today a little bit longer, I could get the things done I meant to get done today. Or we say, if we just had a little bit more time, we could do this other project that we've never started. Or if I had a little bit more time, I would call that friend of mine that I haven't talked to in 6 months, but I've just been so busy. And I think sometimes we allow our busyness just to control our lives and to steal our joy. And if we allow our busyness to steal our joy, then living becomes unfulfilling. And that's really what the book of Ecclesiastes is a lot about, is this vanity, vanity. All is vanity is one of the lines from Ecclesiastes, remember, because it's all meaningless if we don't measure out our time and we take the time to take a rest, a time to regroup, a time to be recharged. Jesus did this throughout the writings about Jesus and the gospel text. He would often separate himself from the disciples and go off by himself to pray, to talk to God, his Father, and to get recharged in order to come back and to do the things he's called to do. But this is hard for us because we live in a busy, busy world. We live in a world that just is always demanding one more thing to get done in a short period of time. And so I encourage you to step back from that sometimes and to think about, how is it that I'm stewarding my rest? How am I taking the time that I have, and not to not use it productively, because it's important to use your time productively, but also how do you use your leisure time in order to be a different person, to be the person that God is calling you to be, to take the rest, to take the time, to allow God to speak to you. Because it's so easy to be busy to the point that you can't even hear God speaking at all, because you filled every moment with activity. Well, there's a song that's written to this that you probably already thought about. That's called To Everything There's a Season, or it's more commonly called Turn, Turn, Turn. And it was written by Pete Seeger in the late 50s. We don't know exactly when Pete wrote it, but according to an interview with Pete Seeger, he said he wrote this song in about 15 minutes. And he wrote it because he was mad at his publisher. And I love this part of the story. He wrote this because he was mad at his publisher for pushing him to write a new song for an upcoming record. So his publisher was saying, Pete, you got to write a new song. And Pete going, there's time for everything, and I don't have time for this right now. So I can just imagine that conversation. But he wrote it kind of as a reaction to what his publisher had pushed him to do. And it turned out to be a beautiful song, taking scripture. But Pete Seeger, of course, recorded it in 1962, and many other folk singers did. Limelighters in 62 as well, and their album Folk Matinee. Pete Seeger's was on a live album called The Bitter and the Sweet. Judy Collins recorded it in 63 on her album Judy Collins No. 3. And then 1965, the Byrds recorded it, and that's probably the most well-known version. The one that the Byrds did is the one that you probably are hearing in your head right now, that when they recorded this Pete Seeger song, Turn, Turn, Turn. So I'd like to sing this for you. As you know, I love folk music, and I think folk music is the music of the people. It's the music of the heart of the people. And that's one of the reasons I love folk music so much, because it really speaks to the time that it was written, and it's hopefully has a timeless message that not only applied to that time, but applies to our time today. So Turn, 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 and I hope you enjoy it. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. A time that you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow. A time for love, a time of hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. Well, that's my prayer for you today, that you realize that there's a time for all things, and that not to feel guilty about taking time to rest or taking time to do something that brings you joy and peace in your life, because that only makes the rest of your life that much more sweet. So I encourage you to do that today, to think about what it is that you love and how that you use that or steward it. How do you use it in a way that's honoring to God and to yourself? Go in peace and have a beautiful day.